I think we'll wait a couple more minutes. I wanted to, before we start the presentation, maybe it makes sense to kind of lay out a little bit what we're going to talk about, and just kind of I wouldn't say ground rules, but just kind of some norms for the evening. So I'm going to ask everybody to mute themselves at first. There will be opportunities. We're going to stop at each section so people can ask questions. You can also type your questions in the chat, and one of our members will be monitoring the chat, and when those questions come up at the appropriate time, we'll read those questions out for us. We are also going to be doing a series of questions and polls. I thought I had set it up as a number of polls, but I think unfortunately I've set it up as one poll with multiple questions because I was in a rush. But hopefully we'll still be able to gather all that information, and I'll just make it available to people and not. All right. Let's see. How many participants do we have?
25, including SMAHT.
Okay, so I guess I'll wait a couple more minutes just to see if more people show up. And it's nice to see friendly faces, and it's nice to see some folks that are new, at least new to me. So thank you for showing up, and appreciate your attendance tonight. And we're very excited to be able to start this process. And I'm wondering if Kathy's iPhone is Kathy Leonard dialing in from a long way away. So,
hi, it's me.
It is you. Good. I'm glad you could join anyway, even though you're away. Thank you. All right. Well, I guess we can get started because the first part of it is rather introductory. So if that's all right with everyone, does everyone have any questions at first about kind of our process or what we're going to do tonight? I guess we'll go through the agenda, and then if there's questions after that, might be a more appropriate time. So, all right. So we're going to start out talking just a little bit about the project and the history of what's happened and what we're hoping to go forward, and it will happen going forward. So in 2018, there was a land purchase that was evenly divided in cost between conservation land and this parcel, which was intended for a community housing project. Over the next year or so, at what was to me an amazing cost, I didn't realize how much it cost for things to be torn down and toted away, but there was a barn, the stable, and a riding area which were on this property from Marilyn Cornelius's ownership, and there was also a sauna there. Closer down to the pond, and to have those demolished and disposed was $50,000, and which came out of SMAHT funds, and that was in 2019. We also, after those were done, undertook some pre-engineering studies to do soil and percolation tests and do just a site analysis both of the topography and the wetlands. And so we've come now to the point now where we're beginning to contemplate what will happen next. And one of the steps that we had always envisioned was doing this type of public forum to engage the community, both nearby neighbors and everyone in town, and communicate what some of the different options that are possible for this land, and to get that feedback to provide guidance for our subsequent steps, which could potentially be a request for proposal of a developer, and also to visualize the different options we have in the development. And if after all the feedback and as we go through more steps, we envision that we would do then a request for proposal or qualifications later in this year. And in that RFP, we would define the projects to realize what the community desires based on not only input here, but input from boards and from informally input that we might gather, and also to develop constraints and requirements for the permitting and the zoning that would come forward. So the order of discussion for this evening is, first we'll do a site overview with some pictures and an extremely amateurish video. And then we'll do some breakouts. And we thought that we were originally thinking of doing a larger, like a number of breakouts, but we thought that this would be a manageable size and it might be better to not do breakouts. We will cover each of these topics, but we'll do a little poll to try to get a feeling for what people's preferences are. And speaking of poll, I think the first poll we would do, and I have to remember how to get at the poll. I'm going to stop sharing. Oh, there's my polls. Okay. So the first poll is, for the first question is, who is here tonight? So are you a near neighbor to the project, a neighbor who lives elsewhere in town? Are you a member of a board or committee? And or are you in staff? Can I get some feedback as to whether people see the poll? Or
we can see it, Mike.
Okay.
We see it, but I don't know if you can submit with only answering one question.
Oh, bummer. Well, I can hide the poll then maybe, and then we can go through and we'll submit at the end. How does that sound? So I'm not seeing that anyone is voting. Does anyone have the possibility of voting or no?
I can't submit.
Bummer.
It won't submit, Mike.
Well, you know what we'll do? I guess then, unfortunately, what we'll do is we will we'll do this polling later so that we can answer all these questions. That's going to be unfortunate. Well, someone has submitted.
I did.
Oh, they've
You
answered
have
all the
to-
questions. I see. They've gone through and answered all the questions. There we
You
go.
have to answer all the questions, yes.
Ah, bummer. Okay. Well, that's unfortunate. I was afraid of that. So maybe what we'll do is I'm going to end the polling. Laura, you've done this polling a lot. If I end the polling, can I start it again later?
You should.
All right, I'm going to end the polling now, and we'll go back and do it at the end so that after all the presentations. So, oh yeah, I can relaunch. So we'll do that later. Okay. All right. So now let's move forward in the. I guess I should ask: are there any questions now in the chat, or you can unmute yourself if you have a question about the order of what we're going to do tonight and what we're trying to accomplish?
I don't see anything in the chat.
All right. And again, if you need to unmute yourself and ask a question, please do. Great. All right, we'll go forward then. So we wanted to do an overview first of just kind of putting the project in space, in kind of in context in space. So where we have here is this is kind of an unusual view. Usually we focus from the road, and this is just off of Google Maps or Google Earth actually, and just being able to look at the space. So this little clearing here is where the barn and the stable and the riding center was in the past. There's this stretch right through here is where the driveway would be, and you see this is Red Acre Road, and this is the boundaries of the property, and this is the Stow. This is Tuttle Lane with Stow Community Gardens. In a a little closer view here is that you can see where this is again Red Acre Road on the top here. This is the driveway, and then this is the clearing here where presumably where the housing would be built. This is maybe a better picture of the land here. So with this more annotated, and we thank Kathy Leonard for doing a lot of this this GIS overlays. Thank you, Kathy. And so we have here in this is the access into the property. You see here that we have in gray, this is the driveway. The future home site is kind of ringed in yellow here. And there are some setbacks, there's some wetlands, and there's some setbacks from the sides. So the houses won't be going, up necessarily against that yellow line, but there's just, in theory, that is the whole buildable space. The brown area here is where the barn and stable and riding circle was in the past. This the green dotted line is the current trail system that on this property and kind of the border to the conservation land. So the property that is owned by SMAHT is this section here and this whole stretch all the way out to Tuttle Lane, although this is not really eligible for building because it's wet and we need the buffer for the housing for the existing homes there. This is a little bit more detail about the housing. So this is where this was the caretaker's home, which is still there. This was the barn, the stables, and the riding center. You see where the existing Red Acre woodlands from the Stow Conservation Trust and some town-owned conservation areas with a community garden and the Tuttle Lane Conservation Area, and this newly formed conservation parcel was. And you see now here, these are the abutting houses that directly abut the property here. So thanks again to Kathy Leonard, but she'd taken a number of perspective pictures. So this is a picture looking into the property from the driveway, sort of so you're standing at the edge of this arrow looking in. So you're looking in to the driveway, down the driveway, and on the right here would be the caretaker's house, and this is looking in to there's kind of a left turn that turns toward the meadow. And this is now, if you turned around and look in the other direction, this is looking down the driveway. So this is just 180 from where we were just a second ago. Now we're looking on the edge of the cleared area, and you see that where the arrow points to the driveway. So you're looking kind of back in that direction in the panoramic view. This is kind of stretched out. It's that 180 kind of panoramic view that you get on a cell phone camera. And now this is looking from the far side of the clearing, looking northeast, again toward the driveway in the distance now. So this gives you probably the best perspective from the very southwestern edge of that clearing. So there is some property behind this, but this is the edge of the clearing. And now looking from the other side of the clearing, this on the left here is the driveway, and so you normally come in and make this kind of left turn. I think these are, having been to this property a number of times, this has really captures it, but I hope it captures it for those of you who have not been there. Again, now this is on the looking southeast from the kind of the northernmost part of this property, looking again where the arrow is the arrow is the driveway. You can see this is an old feed bucket from when they're when the horses were here. That's still, I think it's still on the field. And lastly, now this is looking from the edge down this hill, down this slope to the pond that's down here, where you see in these photographs, it's in blue, ringed in blue is the pond. And now we're looking down this slope. It's a lovely slope, and it gets a little wet down here, so there's not going to be anything building down there, but this will be some nice open space. And most of that land is in the conservation piece of the property. And now this is from the conservation piece of the property, right on the edge of that trail that goes around the pond, but looking directly from where we just looking, and so the back here is where the clearing is in the background. So this is hopefully this comes out, but I took this picture of the this little video of the property with my amateur drone, but let's see if this goes through, and it's going to be a little herky-jerky, but you'll be able to see it. So that was the caretaker's house on the right. Be able to go forward here. This is how you would normally access the property on foot. It was a little windy that day, so we're fighting. My drone was fighting the wind, so hopefully we'll be able to see the whole thing. It was a lovely spring day. And there were lots and lots of ticks out there, so still are, I imagine. And this is again the slope down to the wetlands and back to, now this is back to the driveway. Hopefully that gives you, I wanted to stop here at this point and see if there's any questions. If there would be anybody like to go back and look at those slides again, and see if there's any questions about the property at this point. Please unmute yourself or write in the chat.
So Mike, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, there is a question. What's the acreage to build on?
The total acreage of the parcel is a little under, I think it's 8.8 acres, but a lot of that is that strip that goes out to Tuttle. So the buildable areas between 3 and 4 acres, and if you get all the setbacks and stuff, it's probably about just under between 2.5 and 3 acres for the part that's. And this is very rough because we haven't, that's all gonna be done when the when the site is actually, when there's actually kind of a more professional kind of site analysis, and when they'd start actually trying to site houses and see how that would work. Hopefully to answer your questions.
No other questions at this time.
Well, great. We can always, please also, if something occurs to you, please write it in the chat, and we'll stop occasionally and we'll be able to go back and look at questions. And again, you can feel free to unmute yourself if you wish. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the site plan options. And given it's not that we have decided that there's a maximum of 6 units, and we think that's a kind of that's our goal, that's our target is for 6 units, but there's not, and there's only roughly about 3 acres.
The allied nations named China as a new security threat, calling out its, quote, assertive behavior. The other looming threat, Russia.
Someone has inadvertently unmuted themselves.
Wednesday in Geneva.
Thank you. And it has the news on, so I guess we need to maybe pick it up here so that we're not boring folks. All right, so site details, 6 units. There's potential of single units, duplexes, or a combination of those types of units. Again, approximately 8 acres altogether, but and it's contiguous to conservation land. There's 41-acre parcel that's under the control of the Conservation Commission. Also, it's contiguous to the Red Acre woodland of the Stow Community Trust, or Stow Conservation Trust, pardon me, and also town land, Tuttle land, conservation land, which includes the community garden. So we're going to talk about some model layout type things, and one of the 3 types would be something that's very popular on the West Coast called pocket neighborhoods, where there's where houses are clustered around a central common area. There's also resident design communities where people who, like sometimes intentional communities or that type of thing, where the residents themselves kind of have input into the way that the houses are sited. And they tend to be not clustered. Some of them are clustered, obviously, because that's the choice that people make, but they tend to then distribute the units more widely around the site. And then we'll also talk about some comparable developments in New England, both locally and throughout New England. So again, pocket neighborhoods, these tend to be more popular in dense areas where so they're clustered to preserve green space where there's not, 40, 50, 100 acres next to it that are already conserved. Typically, houses front on a shared common space. Maybe it's like a common green or well, usually green or sometimes a garden. There's also common spaces between the houses, walks, and shared gardens. These are favored in urban or suburban settings, but certainly not only. There's also in rural places. And they tend to put access to the homes and parking and services all on the periphery. And you'll see that as we go forward here. These are some of the West Coast style developments. The one on the left is from Portland, Oregon, and there's, I think, 12 units here clustered pretty close together, but this with common sidewalks and a lovely green and a tree that was preserved. And on these, you see that this is all pedestrian in the center here, and all access to utilities, trash hauling, driveway, all that is all around in a semicircle around these houses. On the right, this is a duplex, so it was that kind of craftsman Portland style or the Oregon style of craftsman, but this is a duplex unit, so it tucks very nicely into the neighborhood. A couple more West Coast type things. There's a pocket neighborhood here in Kirkland, Washington, where there's common spaces. There's a community in this particular one. There's a community building that has and they have tables where people can have common meals if they wish or not. And also this is a 2-story in the one in Bend. This was only a 1,200 square foot cottage, but it's 2 stories and has a full walk-in basement and I think actually that's a garage. Pardon me. And you can see that's where the garage is underneath the house. This one is quite much closer to home. This is in West Concord, Riverwalk. This is, again, very similar to that same style. It was actually designed by the Ross Chapin architects who've been pioneers in this pocket neighborhood. And they're I think they're out in Seattle, Ross Chapin, but these are this is another kind of more close to home. But you see that these, again, there's a central area here, and the houses are on the edge, and then there's parking spaces and these are shared parking spaces here. And so again, this is kind of, so that's, a common feature of all these pocket neighborhood type things. Some more examples here of areas that are, just to give a good example here. Now, these are obviously more units that we're going to have, but it's the concept of having that kind of shared area with all the services on the outside. Now, in contrast, there's these what are resident design communities, and they tend to have more space between dwellings. There's both suburban and rural settings, because they tend to use a little bit more land. These are often attached to farms or other open space, maybe similar to what we have here. And also these tend to be sited to preserve natural landscapes and views of, like, if it's a farm or a well-known landscape, these tend to be sited just to preserve those, the viewscapes. So you see in this area that there's really no, this is the Island Cove, this is on Martha's Vineyard. And again, this is way more units than we're going to have. This is, I think, 12 or 14 units. But I think the point to take is that you see each of these houses, there's really no common space. There's a common road, but they're all tucked. They have a lot of, it's not that kind of open space in between the houses. There's each of them, there's a little break of trees. Also here, this is another one. I can't remember where this one is from off the top of my head, but again, these are spread out over the property as much as they can. There's a little bit more space between them. There's a barn here. There's a garage that's used in common parking spaces. And this is another one. I think this one is from Western Mass. And again, it has a common road, but you see the houses are kind of sprayed out more in a, I wouldn't say like in a development, kind of like as a, in a normal development, but they are spread out more, and there's not the emphasis on common space and shared space, let's say. Now so we wanted to talk about some other, besides the one in Concord, the Riverwalk, we want to talk about some other comparable New England developments. And some of these are affordable, some are market, and some have mixed affordable and market. There's combinations of single units and duplexes, and some are clustered with common areas, and some are more dispersed. But so there's examples of all of these in New England. So one that we've all it's nearby, and we've all been to there and taken pictures and been able to walk around is in Westford. You see they're under some big power lines, but again, this is more units than we would use. But the idea here again is that these are clustered around a central pedestrian area with all the services, parking, and everything else coming around the edge. And then this is slightly different here, where but this is probably, we would look something more like that probably. But these are the styles of homes, and you see around this center part here, these houses are all very similar and they're quite close together. Now this is in Andover, Lupine Road, and these are multi-family units. These are duplexes here, and this is also a duplex with separate entrances. And then I think actually this unit is all duplexes. So there's a number of houses, but they're all multi-unit. But again, I think they're quite attractive and in fitting kind of New England style, as people say, New England style architecture. This is another example from Martha's Vineyard, Scotts Grove in West Tisbury, which is all affordable. There's in West Tisbury, there's a firehouse and a softball field, and then alongside there's always been access out to a bike path, which is out here. But there's actually 3 clusters of homes here. This is detail of one of them. We have the boardwalk, and then it's this central area here. Again, this is probably a little tighter than we would necessarily do it here, but this is all in a fairly small the 9 units on 4.9 acres, and a number of, and 2.8 of those acres is the ball field. So it's only a little over 2 acres for the 9 units. And here's another one in Northampton, where there's a total of 6 dwelling units with three duplexes. And this is in part of a larger development, but again, this is kind of a smaller, this is the affordable element of this. And again, it's 6 units on 1.7 acres. And they did that by doing 3 duplexes.
Before we move on,
Yes.
there were a couple questions in the chat room.
Great.
Okay, the first one, how many individuals could live in a unit? Is there a maximum number of people being anticipated?
That's an excellent question. Given the size of this and the size of the parcel and the market study that we have just has just been completed for us, there will be some mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. One of the other trustees can remind me, or Leonardi, if there are any occupant constraints, like what the largest number of occupants can be in each of those unit sizes. Leonardi?
No, it depends on the size of the bedroom. So you can have 2 people in 1 bedroom. But typically, if you do a 3-bedroom home, likely you're going to have 4 people, maybe
4 people.
5 at most. But like you said, according to the market study, you probably will have a mix of 2 bedroom and 3 bedrooms.
Okay, we have another question. Any consideration for siting with energy conservation, passive solar in mind? Will there be options for solar panels?
Great question. Thank you. We've actually reached out to the groups in Stow that are working on sustainable Stow, I guess, and we've reached out to them to ask them to be involved with this project and to help us both in terms of being able to make sure that we can net zero is probably maybe outside of our reach, but to see if we can have the lowest impact that we can manage, and also to see if there is the capability, because these are going to be affordable units, to help us see if there are any subsidies that might be possible for energy conservation and solar panels, and see if there's any additional monies or grants that might be available to defray some of the cost that additional. But we've also seen we've been going, or at least a couple of us have gone to some energy efficient design webinars and seminars that have been put on by MAPC and the state to show that there's not really a large, in this scale of development, there's not a large additional cost to making the designs energy efficient, which is encouraging. And certainly, I think at the very least, we're going to aim for, just kind of passive passive energy, and hopefully we'll also be able to get some, if we can get funding to be able to do solar, it would be great. Does that answer your question?
I don't see any response or any other questions at this time.
All right, great. Thank you. Thanks for your questions, by the way. This is great. This is why we're doing this. So. The next breakout piece would be about architectural styles, and as part of a memorandum that we wrote when we bought the property, that's a memorandum of understanding with Conservation Commission and the Stow Conservation Trust, there's going to be we've agreed to have it kind of New England style architecture, which I think I don't know if that's well defined. I don't think it means any architecture that ever appears anywhere in New England, but I think it's kind of a traditional New England style. But the idea is that so we have a little. We've agreed to try to aim for that, but I think that probably would happen naturally as it would go on anyway, just in terms of what's marketable in the area. So we decided to go around town, and hopefully maybe this is somebody on the line here, this is one of your houses, but we went around town and highlighted some pictures of houses that we thought were about the same size as what we're contemplating, and certainly architecturally consistent with housing that already is here. Obviously, these houses already are in town. These are those are some 1- and 2-story houses. So I'm going to just go through these, and kind of these are houses that exist in different places. I won't highlight exactly where they are, but for privacy kind of things. These are cottage style houses that are not. These are from the West Coast. The one on the left is from Portland, and the one on the right is from Seattle. Or excuse me, this is the one on the right is from Maine. But these are some other architectural styles. Now, I think if there may be some folks on the call who are not aware of the history of in Stow, down the road in an area called Red Acre Village, there's a little, invite you to drive through there. There's a historic marker about this area, but this is where some small, modest houses were built post World War II at the behest of Mrs. Harriet Bird, who was the owner of the Red Acre Farm. And she built, and I'm not 100%, this is not this history of this area is not my strong suit, but my understanding is, and if somebody else on the phone who could correct me, that'd be wonderful, but if I go astray, but who built some homes and that were ostensibly for returning veterans to just modest starter homes that people would be able to move into town. And there was a number of them built in this area, and it was called Red Acre Village. And we can talk a little bit more about the history of that in a second. But these were all homes from down the street on Red Acre Road. And Mrs. Bird had engaged with an architect named Royal Barry Wills, who came to some renown during this time and was in some ways responsible for the renaissance of the Cape Cod style home after the war. And this was actually a drawing that was published in 1945 in Good Housekeeping magazine of the style of home. This is not a home that was actually built in Stow, but it was representative of the houses that he was looking for, which were homes that would be essentially single-family homes that would be, small family and have be buildable, or you could add on to them. You could add a garage or a barn, that type of thing, but just to be affordable and on a relatively small plot of land, up down to like 1/8 of an acre or less. So when we're going to have a poll later, these are some of the styles of the homes that we just reviewed, and when we do our poll later, we'll ask folks to come back and look at each of these styles and see which ones it would be a multiple choice, and see which ones people find appealing, and there'll be a chance to vote on them. So we'll do this later when at the end of the presentation, we'll resume the poll and hopefully be able to go back and everybody will be able to vote, and we'll put this up while that vote is going on.
All right, we do have another question in the chat room.
Yes, great, thank you.
Would one-story structures be less visible from the immediate neighbors' houses?
Well, I guess it stands to reason. Where the caretaker's home that's there currently is has a full basement and a first and a second floor, first floor, I guess, living floor, and a small, I think 2 small bedrooms. I have not been up there, but it looks like there's 2 small bedrooms on a second floor. So it's actually, 2.5 stories, let's say. And it's possible that that is an area where we could put a 2-story home, and that would not, because that's it's in kind of a depression there. It's possible that a 2-story home could go there, and like possibly even like a duplex or something, because there's a little bit more area there. It can be a 2-story, it would be side by side with multiple stories. So that would be, and that house is very difficult to see from the road or from even the abutting properties. Personally, I'll speak for, not speaking for the trust or anyone else, but personally, I had always kind of pictured that these would be single story cottage style homes, but that's just my little my little visual fantasy, but that's not necessarily reality. All right, well, we'll come back to this and we'll have a little bit more discussion. And please, folks, if you have, this would be a great time. If anybody has a question that they'd like to discuss more, please unmute yourself, and besides the chat, you can ask them the question directly, and we maybe have a little bit more of a, not, this isn't meant to be a presentation. Unfortunately, I've been doing most of the talking, but we're here to listen to you all and get your thoughts. But maybe we get through this and then have the conversation. So the last section was something
Before we move on, there
Yes.
was one more question. Can you go
Great.
back to
Yes,
the
yes, yes.
previous slide?
Yes.
Are L, M, and N missing their number, or the letters rather?
Well, actually, there's no, because those are the pictures that we had were doublets. So, and they tend to be those houses are similar. So H, J, and K are all those are doublets. Unfortunately, that's what we had.
Thank you.
Good eye, though. All right, so the last section, it was about access and connections. And this is hopefully have a little bit more conversation here. We have less to present, or less visuals to do here, but some of the things that we wanted to discuss, and these are the things that have a lot of impact on neighbors and abutters is and everyone in town actually, but is 3 of the topics were about local access to trails, which is that's a deeded that the right of way to those trails is in the deed of the property, and so that access will be certainly be available and highlighted. There also that there's some questions about both resident and guest parking, whether that should be clustered, whether there be parking spots in each home, or whether those would be in a group. These are not necessarily, these are things that would be part of the design, but certainly questions just to be thought of and in general, but also if there's people who have input about those. Options on paving, whether probably the driveway that needs to go in just because of paving and such, that would have to be paved, but there might be other options for parking areas or sidewalks and those kinds of things. There may be other ways to be able to handle those types of pavings, whether they're impervious, surfaces, or maybe even like stone, where the type of stone work where the grass can go through and the ground is exposed. Also about where to put parking, whether the parking should, I guess, whether in terms of, these are questions already about visibility and whether if there's places that we could have the parking so that it's not impacting, there's no visual impact, and they're not potentially not masked. And also that one question has come up a number of times about the existing trees. There's some, certainly on the driveway into the property, there are a number of very large, I believe they're white pines. And some of those, just to give the access that we'll need for be able to fire trucks and just, by zoning the rules, some of those trees will have to come down, and they're kind of signature trees that can be seen from the road, and that's always problematic, and people always love these big old trees, and I do too. But unfortunately, because of the shape of the driveway, there may be some of those may have to be sacrificed. So just again, some pictures about the access, just to point out here, is that this is the property here. The access point is where this yellow bullseye is. Here's the pond again, and this is all conservation parcel, and here is the building parcel. But again, just to highlight that there's the Stow Community Gardens and the tree farm over here. This is the Sargent or Bobritsky land, and this is the Red Acre Woodlands that goes out to South Acton and the connection here, these trails. There is going to be a trail that'll connect these. However, this land is very wet, so it may end up having to be a boardwalk of some sort or something else, and that's out of the purview of our parcel, but it's certainly something that that the town and the Conservation Commission will be looking at. I'm sure potentially would, if you have feedback about that, that would be great. Again, just to highlight again the pictures that we had from the beginning part of the overview, again about the conservation land and the residential parcel. And again, this parcel has a trail that already exists and will not be built on. So this is the caretaker's house, and this would be about as far as the building area could go in this area. And again, this was Kathy's great picture from the GIS of showing where the clearing is, where the pond is, and where the trails already exist, and the driveway with the existing easement, the trail easement, or the right of way, I guess. This was again, I think it's useful to see the property and just to appreciate how wooded it is right now, and even this 2 or 3 acre parcel here that's open is really just embedded in now obviously this lovely fall foliage, but you just see that this is quite a wooded area, and we would there's been suggestions made about beginning to do some sort of plantings now that would be preserved and will have grown up to give a visual barrier to the homes that would be built in the future. And I think that might be, oh, this is just one more view of this portion. So I think this may be the last slide. Yes. So I would like to,
Before we go, there
yeah,
is
no, I was actually going to open this up for questions and ask people to unmute themselves and begin to have a conversation. But
want me to do the chat room first?
yes, let's go ahead and do that.
All right. The trail from the Red Acre Woodland over to the community garden would be a great trail to connect to for these residents, but is often underwater in places.
Yes.
Would there be plans to build a boardwalk to improve access?
I think that's a question that's best handled by the Conservation Commission, and I believe our conservation agent may be on the phone if you'd like to discuss that in the context, but maybe not. I think From my understanding, and I think Kathy, Leonard, you feel free to unmute yourself and talk about this, but I think that the plan is to connect them through some sort of boardwalk. But I don't believe that the plans have actually been finalized yet. But if you've ever walked it or tramped around in that land, you know that this area, particularly right through here, is you'll get wet feet, probably 8 months a year, 7 months a year. Does anybody who's local and has tramped through this land want to discuss this?
Kathy commented that this is something that the Stow Conservation Trust and the Concom are currently discussing.
Okay.
Hey, Mike.
Yes.
You know, in terms of the tree issue, the removal of some of the trees in that access road,
Is this Tim?
yeah, that's actually maybe recommended. When you start bringing in heavy machinery and driving up and down that road and then paving it, trees don't like that very well, and some of those trees may die anyway.
Good point.
And become dangerous in terms of fall factors. So, you know, it's not a bad idea to remove those tall trees.
I just went back to a picture here of the driveway looking out, because even though it looks like it goes all the way, this access starts about here. Does not go, it just goes just about where that pole is. Even though it looks like it's cleared out here and out to here, it really starts here and it needs to go 50 feet in this direction. So a number of these trees would be in that 50-foot swath. So I didn't have a picture. We don't have a picture of directly from the road, but a lot of those trees. And I think it's an excellent point that that they will be disturbed, and certainly heavy equipment going over the roots would possibly have a deleterious effect on the trees.
It often does. And then just a second comment. The idea of a duplex in where the caretaker's house makes sense. But I think that single family dwellings, single floor dwellings would tuck in there so nicely and make that almost totally unobservable from the street, and just be a lovely little hideaway place.
Sure would. And I guess I'll only bring it up as just as an option. And I don't personally favor that, but I think, you know, when we actually have when we put the RFP out and there's developer is, you know, we're not going to be designing, we're not going to be the developer. SMAHT is not. We're going to put an RFP out so that another developer will come in and look at this, and they're going to have a lot of decisions to be made about finances and siting of these and what they're actually going to be able to build and sell. And so that, and our input and the town's input will go into that, and the market study and all those things. But there's going to be decisions made down the road, and there will be, you know, and there'll be multiple opportunities at permitting and other public hearings for the input about the different options that may come up. But your point's well taken. Oops. Yeah, this just makes this space out here just makes a whole lot of sense for looking back here. You can certainly picture a cluster of houses in this area, which, you know, not including the caretaker area.
Okay, you have another question in the chat room.
Go ahead.
Red Acre Road is a heavily used throughway to Acton. It's not a user-friendly road to walk or bike due to being narrow in areas and speed. I missed the number of homes will be built. How will the increased traffic be mitigated?
That's an excellent question, and one of the reasons that we wanted this, we're going to be asked. We've asked for public input is because of that. There is a lot of not a lot of traffic, but there's certainly, and then traffic tends to be high speed, and I think that's going to be something that we're going to have to look at and get some input from the highway department, and potentially from the state, and also from the design. There's not a lot of options on the way that this, because of the narrowness of it, there's not a lot of options about what we can do, but there may be ways of being able to, at the same time, we could do some traffic calming to make sure that the traffic is going slower through this area, or some signage. There's a number of things come to mind. But again, because of where that is, it's not exactly, maybe it's a good idea to show it again on a map. It's not on a curve itself, but the curve is right down here. Maybe this isn't, it might be the best, I don't know, but people do come around here, and there is a hill, even though there's not a hill, there's a bit of a hill here from Tuttle kind of going up here. So I think that they're right around this area. It's going to be, the sight lines are not great. So I think that is something that we all need to keep in mind as we move forward with this, is that this is something that's going to need to be managed for the safety of everyone, for abutters and for the folks who
So
would
there's
be
a response.
Yes.
Agree that it's narrow in places. There can be high-speed traffic at rush hour. It is also heavily used by bikers and walkers, especially early in the day and on weekends. I doubt that 6 units are going to substantially add to the traffic. And then there's another question. Are sidewalks out of the question?
I don't think sidewalks are out of the question, but it's maybe beyond the purview of this meeting. We certainly, I don't know, we'll try to make sure we have walkable spaces within this development, but in terms of the access from the road or access on the road with sidewalks, I think that's probably a larger question. And if there are anyone available from the planning department or planning board, that might be a more appropriate question for them, if anybody's on the call. And I would encourage you to unmute yourself, or to answer either in the chat, or to unmute yourself and
I don't see representatives from the planning board. Having said that, this would have to be part of a special permit discussion. And usually sidewalks are required on the frontage of the street. And we don't have much frontage here.
right.
So I don't know how that would help much if you're talking about sidewalks along Red Acre Road.
Yes, could you, I mean, whoever asked that question, could you expand a little bit? And did you mean along the Red Acre Road, or did you mean within the development itself?
I meant along Red Acre Road. That it was discussed a few years ago, and to put more houses on there. And I mean, that looks very nice if you want to walk in the woods. But if you want to, the nice thing about that is it's not that far from the plaza and from businesses, but to walk is a hazard, which is a shame.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I think I
I would add, I really think that's something that's broader than just this development. When I was on the Lower Village subcommittee, we actually worked with the funds that we had in the sidewalk funds to build along Pompasiticate. But that really came from the planning department. It spanned more than just one development. Okay, another question. Any way to lower the speed limit? It's 25 miles per hour once you get to Acton.
I think that is definitely something, again, not within the context of this, but I think possibly this would stimulate a conversation that could be had with the highway department and the planning department to discuss the possibility of both reducing the speed limit and potentially, as we mentioned earlier, traffic calming measures, either narrowing the road or and I don't know what the state of the art is right now for for those, what's most in vogue right now for traffic calming in our type of environment, as opposed to like a urban environment. But certainly, there's speed bumps, there's or what they call them, sleeping policemen, or narrowing the roads in certain areas. But I think that we certainly will capture this. This is anyone who's been down that road or lives on this road. This is not a new issue, and certainly the point about its proximity to the plaza and such. That's great. I think Kathy has also mentioned that there's another hazard is down at where the Red Acre Woodlands down in this area here, down near Kathy and Tom's house. I'm going to in this area here, where Kathy and Tom's house, where this trail goes in. There's a little widening of the road right there, where maybe a car could kind of park with their left tires still on the pavement. And I guess there's been some discussion about whether there's something that can be done there to make that a little wider there. And I think this is, and we'll take this input and feed it back both to the highway department and planning department, is that there's, that this is an issue that there's some more active discussion about.
Just more comments in the chat room about speed limits and people who may be obeying them or not.
Yes. Well, I guess we can also talk about public safety. I imagine would be great too. So, is there would folks like to unmute themselves and have kind of a general conversation, or is that going to be unwieldy with the number of people we have? We have 24 people on. Would folks like to have kind of an open discussion, or should we do the polls now, or what do you think? Maybe we do the polls and then we could review the results of those polls collectively.
Do the polls.
All right. Let's relaunch the polling. All right, now there's a number of questions here. I said I would do that.
Can you put the housing styles back
Yes.
on?
There we're going.
And Mike, once we go through the poll, there might be some more questions that pop up. I just see one new one right now.
Sure, that makes sense. I think we can review the result. We'll share the results and then we can review it.
One of my favorites, K, doesn't seem to be on the poll.
So I think we'll let it go about another 30 seconds. We've had, of the 24 people on, 20 people have responded, and I think there are 4 SMAHT members. So that might be the why we're going to be stuck at 20. So we'll end it up in a minute. We'll end the polling, and then we'll share the results, and we can take a look at it as a group. All right, last licks. We'll be ending the polling now. Oh, 21. Somebody snuck it in there. Great. Anyone need more time? Well, great. Well, let's end the polling and share the results. All right. So let's see. We have 2/3 of the group are folks who live near to the project, and you have some board and committee members and some staff members. Thank you very much for attending. We seem to be split between having all single units and a mix of single and duplex, but not a lot of support for all duplexes. So that we'll take that under consideration. So thank you. Any discussion about that? Anybody want to talk about it? Their choice? I won't put anybody on the spot, but I'm interested about the all duplexes, whether that's a matter for cost or whether there's something behind that. So feel free to elaborate in the chat if you wish, or to unmute yourself. Now we have, I guess it would help. Do we still have on the screen? Do we still have the different housing types on the screen?
Yes, you just need to scroll down.
No, I have it. I'm looking at the results, so I'm.
Yeah, we can see the results. We just need to scroll. So
Okay.
it looks like B was the winner at 67%.
B, A, and G, I guess. A, B, and G. Okay. But not, yeah, pretty clear, I guess. Nothing that's too terrible. And what's the last one here? Again, about the most important access issues are access to the conservation land, which is clear, and also the entering and exiting the development. And I think that we certainly heard that, and we'll try to bring that issue to the fore as we discuss both in the permitting part, but also in conversations with in design and with other boards. So I'm going to download the results while I have them here. Great. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing the results. Is that okay? Does anybody else still want to take a look at them, or unmute yourself? All right, Laura's
All right,
okay.
we have a couple more questions.
Okay.
Or, question and a comment.
Should I leave this up while we're having the questions, or no?
Yeah, that's all right.
Okay.
So how much control do you have once a developer is chosen?
Well, there's still going to be a permitting process, and so the town will have control, as it has over any special or comprehensive permit, depending on how this goes forward. And we'll be able to put certain constraints in our RFP and so that those will be known by any developer going into this project, that those constraints will be part of the project. So, you know, we will grant the contract. So we can write certain constraints into that contract right off, you know, from the beginning. Now, what we don't want to do is be too restrictive, so that something that we're not aware of right now, some sort of constraint about the site, some topography or some other element of it would make it so that it was no longer financially or economically feasible, or the number of units wouldn't be possible, or those types of things. So we have to be clear that there are real constraints in terms of something that we like put, like, well, we really don't want this or that. But within a certain four corners, just, within the four corners of that proposal, and the permitting process, which there will be multiple, as usually for this, there's, multiple stages where input will be solicited and encouraged, and then also in the actual decision, there will be constraints then that will occur. That, Laura, do you want to talk a little bit more about that as our kind of planning person?
So once we issue an RFP, we would select a developer that meets the requirements of the RFP. Once the developer is selected, they're supposed to deliver against the requirements of the RFP, but they still need to go through a development approval process to get the permit. So that's where there's public input, there are public hearings. So there is a lot, it's not just, here's a developer, go to it, make it up. There's a lot of oversight. Okay, we have a couple other comments. One is the only advantage of all duplex is the reduction of building footprint. Then there's a question, will we have an opportunity to comment on the RFP?
Well, certainly. We will be publishing. This is probably going to happen later, probably after the summer, but in the fall timeframe. All of our meetings are open public meetings, and we encourage folks to come. We publish the agendas ahead of time, and we encourage folks to, I guess it looks like we'll be meeting in person, so we encourage folks to come down to the town building and join us. And even though housing tends to be a little dry, we like to have a little fun, and we encourage folks to come and join us and join the discussion. We will. I guess, given that comment, it could be that we'll ask Leonardi about exactly, there are certain procedures for RFPs, and we'll talk to use Leonardi Array, who's our consultant who advises us on these types of matters. We can discuss with them how to kind of where in the process would make the most sense for us to be able to float out the current status of the proposal or the RFP and get some feedback on that. So,
okay, more questions. What is the financial incentive for a builder to make all affordable units? I thought they make money on the market rate units and underwrite the affordable ones.
Yes, that is the way of the world, isn't it? Well, these would be most likely be nonprofit developers, and there are not many, but a multiplicity of. I mean, there are more than one. So there are a number of. If you look around in surrounding towns, in Acton, in Sudbury, in Hudson, I believe there are similarly sized developments that are all affordable, and that would be just part of those. That would be the constraint of the RFP, was that we're going to be building 6 affordable units, and people who are wanting to make a lot of money would not respond to that RFP. Leonardi, do you want to talk? I mean, if you could speak to that a little bit in terms of like who might do this and what would be their incentive?
Yes, like you say, likely it will be a non-for-profit developer, but they also will have to look for some subsidy or a grant, either from the town or from the state.
Right, and that's it probably it's a good point is that all affordable developments will need to be subsidized further. So besides the cost that came from SMAHT's money, which is town money, of course, that comes from, in general, our money comes from funds that have been paid to the town in lieu of building units, often from some of the other developments in town where there's an option whether to build units or pay money toward other, to the town, or a combination of those. So our monies have come from like Arbor Glen and from the Regency, and there have been a number of developments where people have built a certain number of units and then decided to pay the town the money from not to build all the units that they needed to. For instance, instead of building 6 units, they will build 3 units and then pay the town for 3 units, the equivalent of what it would cost them to build 3 units. And those money comes to SMAHT. So this land was purchased with money that came from those payments into the trust. And there will be, most likely, there may be other grants and other possibilities, particularly on if there's anything in the sustainable or energy efficiency, there might be some monies that may be available there. But in general, there will probably be a request in the future to the Community Preservation Committee for some additional subsidy for the building of these units.
Yeah, and I will just emphasize, we do want these units to be on our subsidized housing inventory, the SHI. And this is a list that the Department of Housing and Community Development creates, and they maintain it for every community within Massachusetts. And that's where you are supposed to have 10% of your housing be on this list. And again, subsidized. I want to underline that because we have to have some kind of subsidy in order for even consideration. And that could be something like CPA funds. It may be something like trust funds. It could be the land. And so we have to make sure that we're very clear about what that subsidy is. Other large scale developments get tax breaks, for example. They go through programs like that. So again, it's not like we're just giving something away and getting nothing in return. And I hope that's clear. Okay, another question. Would you wait to convey to the developer until after the permits are granted, or would that happen before? Delaying conveyance would seem to give the town more opportunity to work in partnership with the developer.
Well, I guess a good model for this is the development we did in partnership with the Habitat for Humanity of North Central Massachusetts on Sudbury Road, and we did not transfer the property until the appropriate permits were and funding were obtained. So that is a way that we maintain control. Now, every deal is different, but that would be the model that we would prefer, I believe. I can't speak for the whole trust, but
I think likely that would be the most. Typically, you're not going to transfer the land until the permits and the funding are secure. So,
and there's a presumption that the land would come, that we would transfer the land, but depending on the economics of a deal, there might even be some money that might be able to come back to the trust from the transfer, and that's just something that remains to be seen yet.
Okay, comment again about duplexes, also have less surface area, so lower energy use. And then a question very similar to what I was just saying, are the developers getting the land for free?
I think that remains to be seen. There's a presumption for these kinds of projects that is the case. And again, because of the people who would tend to do this, it would be a nonprofit where there would not be a profit motive. They're not doing this because they're going to get rich from it. This is their mission, but that remains to be seen exactly. But it's probably going to be at low cost, if not free.
Can I add something on that, Mike?
Please.
So even if it is a for-profit developers and the permitting process is a comprehensive permit, the state caps of the profits that they can make out of this development.
Right, good point. And that's what I think, there's a specific number, isn't there? A specific, like 10% or something, or
10, 15, something like that.
stuff like that.
And that gets double checked, so it's not like
Hi, Tim.
Hey, Mike, I have a couple of comments, if I may.
Please.
Okay, you know, I've lived on Red Acre Road for 46 years, so you know, I walk on it and I bike on it, and you know, the traffic's there, but so far I've managed to coexist biking and walking with the resident traffic, and you know, and traffic really hasn't gotten worse except at drive time in the morning and the afternoon. I mean, right now I'm looking out my kitchen window. I haven't seen a car go by in 15, 20 minutes. So to try to think of remedying Red Acre Road traffic kind of scares me, because the solutions are to widen it, put sidewalks on it, and that would create better sight lines for the drivers and encourage faster speeds.
Agreed.
You know, the only people that, you know, I find troublesome are the people that are going way over the speed limit. You know, I don't want to even see the speed limit reduced. What I'd much rather see is a better partnership with public safety and coming in those busy times and starting to flag some of those people who are going way over the speed limit. Not me, but other people.
Tim, I'm going to interject. I know that Boxborough Road residents had very similar concerns. And so there was a lot more police presence, if you will. They have one of those speed meters. They put more lines on the road with big 30 mile per hour on it. So there is a way to help remediate that.
Without changing the configuration of the road.
Exactly.
Right. And the other thing that, you know, this, again, it's not exactly related to the Cornelius property development, but if you start cutting down trees on Red Acre Road, you increase the temperature of Red Acre Road. And I know from experience going from 117 to my house next to Walnut Ridge, the temperature can drop easily 3 degrees in the summertime. And so I like the trees on the road. I like the confinement of it. I think it serves a lot of purposes, and I'd hate to see those things changed just because of this development, which is really only going to increase traffic by maybe 6 cars in the morning, 6 cars in the afternoon, and then on the weekend, the occasional car going in and out, which is really not a whole lot of traffic.
Well, Tim, thank you for making those points, because I think it just illustrates how complex making any change to these things can be. There's really no clear, simple answer for one way or another. So I think we're going to have to, you know, work with the people who do this. This is certainly not our area of expertise in terms of traffic and this kind of public safety stuff, but make sure that, you know, let's look at this as an opportunity to have another conversation with those folks and to see if there's, as opposed to like what can be done that's not drastic but could potentially alleviate other problems. So thank you, Tim.
Thank you for making this open meeting, Mike. I mean, I you know, as somebody, a longtime resident of Red Acre Road, I have really all along the way appreciated the involvement that you've elicited from the people on Red Acre Road. And I just hope that continues, because it settles people and makes me feel better informed. And it's great. Thank you.
And based on the remaining comments in the chat room, Tim has a fan club.
It doesn't, you can't monetize it though, Laura. That's the problem.
Well, I'd like to single out Kathy. I think Kathy Leonard has left the meeting, but I'd really like Kathy has been just really comes to every one of our meetings and makes sure everybody is has been able to like forward our minutes out to the group, or at least summarize sometimes. There's a lot of stuff that we talk about that's not all that interesting, but at least summarize the parts about this project out to abutters and to a distribution list that she had. So, and she's done a ton of work with us, and we thank her so much for that. And we encourage more people. I mean, it's not just Kathy. Everybody can come to our meetings. We love to have folks. We love to have the input. So, feel free. We usually meet the first Monday or first Wednesday of the month, but please check we put things on the calendar in the town calendar, and hopefully you get a chance to come to a meeting or two.
So Mike, it sounds like we're starting to wrap up a bit. If people kind of digest all of this and have some additional thoughts or opinions, or they wake up in the middle of the night and said, oh, I should have said this, where should they reach out?
Well, apparently they should call Tim. I think they should. Tim is they can let it. He'll set their mind at ease. No, I think certainly my email is kop017701775@gmail.com, and they're welcome to send it to me. Also call. My phone number is on the SMAHT's webpage, and so you can give me a call. That's my home number, but usually we don't answer, but it takes a message and we'll call you back. I also encourage folks to talk to the planning board, because they're the folks who give us the most support on staff, and if you need to talk to somebody during the day, those are the best people to, and they've been very, very patient and good about taking input and making sure that we hear about it. All right, well, that's I think that's about everything we had to do today. Thank you very much, everybody who's joined us. I was very, very happy to have all the folks and who've joined, and thank you, Kathy Sfera, for joining as well, and Jonathan. Hopefully, you got a good recording of this, and we'll get a chance to see this again on Stow TV. And thanks to the trustees. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
All right, I think we're gonna.
Thank you, Mike.
All right, we're gonna. I guess we'll wrap it up. Thanks, everybody, and
Well done, Mike.
we'll get the
Thank you.
we'll get the recording. This has been recorded, and I think we'll possibly. I don't know if anybody's got the patience to sit through it, but we'll look at options for being able to put this on our on the website, and certainly we'll talk to Jonathan about whether that's possible to do it on the Stow TV schedule. So, thank you all.